Hello, everybody. This is Joe Garner, and I am your host of I Can't Make This Shit Up. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a somewhat personal issue that I had earlier today. This is going to be an episode that is prison wife specific. Um, it's going to center around honesty, trust, loyalty, integrity. Basically, just you know, relationship issues, but especially relationship issues while, your loved one or your other half is incarcerated. Um, so I saw a quote earlier today that I really liked, and it made me think. So it says, integrity gives you real freedom because you have nothing to fear since you have nothing to hide. Earlier today, I got into a fight with my husband because, I told him the truth. I was open and honest about something, and he still thought I was lying. So it really exploded into a much larger issue after that, and then just kind of kept piling on and just adding things that really just made it explode into a massive fight. And I'm just trying to see who else experiences stuff like this. Has anybody else had to deal with, um, you know, relationships where you tell the truth and you are still accused of lying? Or, is this something that happens like in a day to day life setting? Um, yeah, so I just want to talk about, these sorts of things because this is something that has been a really big issue in my marriage and something that is definitely a stressor for me and something that just really it pushes the limits, especially in my relationship in my marriage. And um, it's hard. It's extremely hard. So I'm just trying to see who else deals with these sort of things and what how you go about solving this. Um, So, I mean, today, like I said, I told my husband the truth about something and was very open and honest about it. And I was still accused of lying. And it just turned into an all out huge fight that just really was completely unnecessary. And he still accused me of lying and, you know, making things way bigger than what they needed to be. And I feel like this is like a constant issue with us. And, I'm a very open and honest person. I'm very blunt. I don't beat around the bush. I don't sugarcoat shit. I tell people how it is because that's how I want to be told. I don't want people to sugarcoat shit for me. I don't want people to beat around the bush. Be direct, say what you have to say and get put it out there. So that's how I am because that's how I want people to be with me. I've always been that way. I've never been somebody to, just in sort of terms, pussyfoot around the truth or, put things lightly because my life is, so extreme and the things that happen to me, it's just, if I don't just put it out there and say what I have to say, then, it's just not going to be good for anybody. So that's why I am the way I am. And that's why I am very blunt. And I, tend to probably hurt people's feelings because of that, where I do say what I mean. I mean what I say. And sometimes it comes out and mean when I say it. Um, but that's just how I am. I'm rough around the edges and I can be a little abrasive and, I don't feel bad because at least I'm telling the truth. I'm being honest. And I feel like, as long as I'm doing that, then, I can't be doing anything wrong. So why is it that I'm still being accused of lying from the one person that should be trusting me the most? And it's hard and it hurts. And it's just something that, really need to work on in my marriage. And, I'm wondering, like, what other prison wives out there deal with this sort of thing? Is this like a common denominator in this type of relation? Are listening. What do you guys do when this happens? Like when somebody accuses you of lying when you're telling the truth? Like, how do you guys handle it? Because I feel like today it just, made me feel even worse after I said what I had to say and after I told the truth and was open and honest, because then I got hung up on this morning. And from there, my day was horrible. I had stuff going on that, I found out. I Make a long story short, I found out that I could be looking at, a little bit of time in prison possibly. I had court today, and one of my charges holds a mandatory 22 months prison sentence. And that was really, really hard to swallow, especially since I'm so close to, having my record expunged. And this just popped up out of nowhere. And so the fact that, in the county that I'm facing these charges in, does a mandatory 22-month prison sentence for this particular charge when I literally only have one felony on my record, and it was 5 years ago. Like, that's absurd. That is completely outrageous, and I don't understand how they can do that. It's just, it blows my mind. And, they were going to drop that charge if I pled guilty. The first offer they came to me with was they would drop that charge if I pled guilty to, two charges that are easily thrown out because they're my own prescriptions. They charged me with possession of my own prescriptions. And I was like, no, like, that's not happening. No, I'm not doing that. So, and then my lawyer for, basically doesn't want to do his job and wants to take the easy route. And, it just, what it boils down to is a public defender is not the way to go with this type of case. And the situation that I'm in when I'm trying to get everything just completely dropped, and he doesn't want to actually do the work. And so it's making it so that, every time I said something or asked a question, he pretty much gave me a rebuttal right away. And it really made me feel like he just doesn't want to do anything to help me. And he just, thinks that I'm going to take one of these plea deals, and that's not what it is. That's not going to happen. I'm too close to having my record expunged, and I've got too many things going for me professionally that I can't have these charges on my record, and I don't deserve to have these charges on my record. This is bullshit charges that were completely dropped once, and then the state picked them back up and charged me again. And it's just stupid, and it's not right. And it's, at this point, like, today was just fucking horrible. And I really feel like they're just trying to railroad me for whatever reason. And the only reason they were able to, put these charges on me was because a confidential informant, set me up with false information. So it's just a big ass mess, and I don't even know where to start, where to begin. what to do. I know I need to fire my fucking lawyer, and I need to hire a new one that's actually going to do the work and, do what he's supposed to do and, work for me and work to get these charges taken care of completely. So there's nothing on my record. And, I'm not dealing with any of this bullshit because I shouldn't have to. So that is what I'm dealing with. And, today I had to be at court at 11 across the state in Saginaw. And it just, getting there was an issue. And, I told my husband how I was getting there, and he basically threw a fucking fit and accused me of lying about it. And so just one mess into another. And then this evening's phone calls were just terrible. And basically got accused of lying and, just, I don't know. It's just very, very difficult to deal with, and I'm just kind of over it. So I'm just hoping that, maybe you guys can give me some insight on how you guys deal with people accusing you of lying when you're telling the truth. How do you guys react? What's your, what's your comeback? Like, how do you prove that you are telling the truth? How do you go about things? Like, how does your conversation go? I'm just interested in seeing like how you guys handle this kind of situation, because I'm at a loss at this point, and I'm tired of arguing. I'm tired of fighting, and I just really want, this whole trust and honesty thing to, just stick, and it's not happening, and it's really, really difficult to deal with. So that is, a big issue in my life right now. And, with everything going on, it shouldn't be something that I should be dealing with. My husband's coming home in like 60 days, and, it's like, how are things going to be once he actually is home? And how am I going to have to deal with this shit, on a daily basis? Like, is this going to be an issue, or is this just an issue because of incarceration? Because he's behind bars and, can't check up on me every time he wants? Or is this something that's, going to continue on outside of prison? So it's really frustrating, and it gets me to the point to where like I'm pushed to my breaking point and I don't know what to do. Because it makes me depressed. It makes me down. I get super sad. I get really, really emotional. I get really angry. That's really one of the most difficult things that I have to deal with all of this, is the anger that comes with it. Because, I get angry at the situation. I get angry at him. I get angry at myself because I let him push me to that point. And it just sucks all the way around. So I'm trying to, do what I think is right. And it's like every time I take 2 steps forward, I get sent 5 steps backwards. But I saved a couple of these quotes that I really liked, that have to do with like honesty, integrity, loyalty. Let's see. I really like this one just because it has a lot to do with me personally. My story is filled with broken pieces, bad decisions, and some ugly truths, but it's also filled with a major comeback, peace in my soul, and grace that saved my life. I'm going to actually put this one on my website because that is hands down 100% me. And I really, that says it all right there. Yeah. So I really, really like that quote. This one's a good one too. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who could be hurt by someone multiple times and still believes there's a good side to them. I do that all the time. I will let you fuck me over 1,000,001 times and I'll still, you know, let you back in with open arms because I feel like, I still see there's good inside everybody. And I still feel like, I want to trust everybody, even though, I get fucked over 6 ways to Sunday. I still, try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. This one is another really good one that describes me, my personal life, and just how I am. It says, you need to understand that I'm damaged. I get triggered easily. I have struggled with things. I won't talk to anyone. I'll shut you out. I'm not going to be able to trust you for a while because everyone has left, cheated, or chose someone else. That one really resonates with me because for the longest time, and I have really bad attachment issues and abandonment issues because of people leaving me, turning their backs on me, dying, basically, and just, leaving me by myself. I do feel like, yeah, I'm damaged. I do get triggered easily, and I've struggled with a lot of fucking things. I do shut down, and my trust is very unique because I tend to trust people too easily and give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and then it always comes back to bite me in the ass because I trust very easily, and I guess because I want to believe there is good in everybody, that I fall for people's bullshit a lot, and it ends up fucking me in the long run. And so, I get hurt really easily too. And people let me down, people disappoint me, and it sucks because I have certain standards in myself, and I set the bar, quite high for myself. So I expect other people to meet the expectations that I expect myself to hold. And so if I expect myself to be held to certain expectations, I expect other people to be held to those expectations as well. And when people, continuously let me down, continuously disappoint me, aren't doing what they say they're going to do, it really hurts. And it really gets me to the point to where, like, I just want to say fuck everybody and I hate everybody. And basically it's just me on my own because, I can't trust anybody to follow through with anything that they say they're going to do. So it gets really, really irritating. It gets really frustrating. It makes me angry. And I just, I don't know what to do because people don't, they don't do what they say they're going to do. And, I'm one of those people that I'm not going to make a promise that I can't keep. If I make a promise to somebody, you better believe that that's what it is. I don't ever make promises I can't keep. And if for whatever reason I do break a promise, it's for a good reason. It's not something that I intentionally do. It's something because, my life is fucked up and, wrenches get thrown in every fucking direction at me. And, right in my area of control. And make a long story short, I have to go 6 different ways to get to one area, and zigzag and jog and back and forth and, until I finally get there. And it is really annoying, actually. Nothing can ever just be easy for me. It's always got to be fucking difficult all the time. And so with that being said, like, I get really, really frustrated with people, but, again, I set certain expectations for myself and I expect other people to respect those expectations and follow them too. So, and I don't feel like it's that hard of a thing to do or that much to ask of somebody. Like, if you know that if you know that, I expect, you to be somewhere at a certain time, and you don't get there until like 30 minutes later. I mean, really? Like, you better have a damn good excuse and a damn good reason as to why you're not there. Like your house is on fucking fire, something like that, you know. Yeah, because it's just like, I don't know. I have a really hard time with people disappointing me and letting me down. That's just all there is to it. So yeah. This is a really good one that I like. It says, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to let people go when they want to go. No chasing, no begging. Let it hurt, then let it heal. I kind of encountered this earlier in the week, and I really resonate with this one because I had to let somebody go that, I didn't want to, but again, that whole expectation thing, I expected this person to, be one thing, and they showed me something completely different, and it sucks because I really had very high expectations for this person in particular, and I saw us doing a lot of really good work together, and they proved different, and it sucks because they weren't what I thought they were, and it just ended up hurting me more than anything because I got let down, I got disappointed, and it's just shitty situation and not fair. And now I haven't even heard from this person in like 4 days, so it's just bullshit. I feel like the least they could do is talk to me and tell me what the fuck is going on, instead of ignoring me and hiding, and not telling me how they feel or what's going on or any of that. I mean, fuck, at least give me some sort of bullshit reason as to why you're ignoring me and hiding and not speaking. Some sort of bullshit reason, some sort of fucking excuse. Don't just ghost me for no reason. Like, at least give me something. But no. So yeah, it sucks because I thought this person was gonna make a difference, and nope, same shit. So I put this one on my Facebook. This quote says, having a good heart has done nothing but make me look stupid. Yeah, that's one self-explanatory, I think. This one is one that I really is very significant to me, because it's, my anger has always been a reflection of how hurt I am. Nobody understands that. Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger stems from people being sad, stems from people being hurt. I was really angry for a long time because of the things that I've been through, because of my mom's death. That was the main reason I was angry for so long, and it made me very bitter. The fact that I feel like she left me, when I was so young, and I felt that what she did was very selfish, and I felt like it wasn't fair because I needed my mom. My mom was my best friend, and she left me, and it wasn't, the reason I am no longer quote unquote religious or in the Protestant faith is because they say that God never puts more on your shoulders than you can handle. Well, when my mom died, that was more than I could fucking handle at the age of 15. And when that happened, I stopped believing in God, and I decided to become spiritual. I'm pagan in, if you want to be specific, I'm pagan. I believe in Mother Nature. I believe in the elements, because at least with that, I don't have to, think about Mother Nature putting anything on me that, is going to be specific to me. It's going to happen to everybody. A hurricane happens to, different areas. A tornado affects different areas. Snowstorms affect different areas. It's not just a singular event, and it's something that happens to multiple people. So that's something I can handle. That's something that I can see. That's something that I can feel. So I don't have to feel like that I'm being singled out by, God or my religion or any of that. So that's why I stopped being religious and decided to, find something else because, at the age of 15, God taking my mom, that was too much for me. And it, drove me to my first suicide attempt. It drove me to, really the start of my pretty much 25-year battle with a disease of addiction, because of trauma. And when my mom died, that was a very traumatic event for me. And it was something that took me a very, very long time to actually deal with and get through and not be angry anymore and not be angry at the world and not hate everybody and want to just run every time I felt cornered, or just go and use every time I felt like shit got too tough. That was my way out. That was how I coped with things. I didn't feel. I decided to use substances, and I would just numb and ignore things and make them temporarily go away until I got high again, because it was better than feeling any of what I was dealing with. So, that really was the main reason why I used drugs and why I, stayed in active addiction for so long. My active addiction started at the age of, I'd say 14, and did not end until I was 33, roughly. So that's a long fucking time to be in active addiction. A long fucking time. And I can't say that I know very many people that have lived to speak about their active addiction for that long. There's a reason why we don't see 50-year-old heroin users. There's a reason why we don't see, people in their late 40s still on fentanyl, because they don't make it that long. the I'd say the median age for an opioid user in the US today would be, I'm gonna Google it, but I'm gonna take a guess, it being between 26 and 28. We'll see though. See what Google says. Median age of opioid user in US. So it says the rate of opioid use rose from 12.1% in 2006, peaked at 22.8% in 2013, and decreased to 11.7% in 2019. Chronic use was 5.1%, 10.7%, and 7.6% respectively. Heavy use was 5.5%, 10.7%, and 7.6% respectively. So, but that doesn't give me the answer to my question. Okay, going back. So how many people you know? So let's see. It would probably help if I put age in my search. Median age of opioid user in US. It says, okay, so highest among adults aged 25 to 34 years in this age group. 1 in 5 deaths in the United States is opioid related. 1 in 5 deaths is opioid related in the United States. That's crazy to me. That is crazy to me. So let's see, what demographic is most affected by opioids? That would be the white rural communities. Interesting. So overdose deaths have nearly doubled in Black, Hispanic, and American Indian / Alaska Native communities in the past few years. In its early years, the epicenter of the opioid epidemic was in largely white rural communities, and this came out in September 5th of 2024. Interesting. So it still didn't give me the median age of opioid user in the United States specifically. Now, the median age of heroin user in the Netherlands is 56. We don't see heroin users that are 56 years old in this country because they don't make it that long. The reason heroin users can even make it to the age of 56 in the Netherlands is because they have decriminalized drugs, and heroin use is kind of like, so people in the Netherlands can go and dose on medical grade heroin twice a day, where they know what they're getting. It's clean. It's medical grade. They can go twice a day, and they are dosed by people that know what they're doing. They're medically trained, and these people aren't going to overdose and die. That's amazing to me, the fact that they have really nobody new coming into heroin use, and the users that they do have are in their late 50s, mid to late 50s. And that's because their opioid epidemic that started in the late 80s, early 90s, was generally people coming back from the Vietnam War. They were, younger, early 20s, late teens, hippie type people. And, they called their opioid epidemic a health crisis rather than a criminal crisis or, criminal issue. And I think if the US were to, look at the opioid epidemic in that light, we wouldn't have the issues that we do. We wouldn't have the overdose deaths that we do. And really, it is a health crisis. It's not a criminal issue. Drugs are going to be around. Drugs are going to be in the country. The cartel are always finding new ways to get drugs into this country, and it's not going to stop. Now, is there a way that we can, possibly make substance use safer for people? Absolutely. That's what safe consumption sites are for, where people can go in, use their illicit substances safely, not die, and, drugs are then decriminalized. So, people don't have to fear being locked up for using substances. People don't have to fear, being stigmatized and looked down upon and looked at as they're the scum of the earth and that they're the worst that society has seen. And, just really just completely, just less than human. And it's really unfortunate that people still stigmatize and make people feel that way. And, that people still feel like, that disease is not an addiction, that it's a choice, which it's not. That has been scientifically proven. It is evidence-based that addiction is a disease. It is not a choice. Now, the fact that that person makes a choice to pick up and use that first time, yes. But biologically, there is a switch that gets flipped. And if that switch gets flipped, then that means there is a precursor to addiction in that person's biological, genes, or, that's just how their, system is, that they are predisposed to the disease of addiction. It is genetic, it's biological, it is environmental, it is, it's even socioeconomic. If a person comes from a lower class on the socioeconomic, scale, there is a larger chance of that person developing addiction. If that person has gone through trauma, there is a better chance that that person is going to develop an addiction. If that person has parents that have addiction, again, genetics play a big part in this disease. It's amazing how this disease factors into every single, category that, that makes up a person, social class, biological factors, environmental factors. If, say, for instance, a person goes through abuse, or even better yet, say this person went through Hurricane Katrina and ends up in an impoverished area where, everything's been flooded, the whole city has to be rebuilt. Addiction took a huge toll on New Orleans, and it made a big impact on the people of the city because of the trauma that they experienced, because of the, you know, the mass damage that the city took, and, the way people were living afterwards. People's entire neighborhoods were gone. Everything they own, gone. Can you imagine waking up one day and you have nothing because your house floated away? Literally floated away? I mean, I can't even imagine. I've been through a couple natural disasters. I've been through a couple tornadoes where, the shingles lifted off my roof. I heard it. I heard the tornado coming. It was so close that I heard that train sound that they talk about when a tornado becomes really close to you. And it's scary as shit. At first it's like, oh, cool, let's watch the tornado from the back porch. And then it starts coming towards you and you're like, fuck this, get in the house. And you take cover. It's tornadoes are devastating, and they whatever's in its path will destroy. There's also massive snowstorms that we've had that, can have a huge impact on, a city or a town or a large group of people and, way of life. So, there's so many things that people endure every day, day after day. And, there's so many different factors that play into a person having this disease. The thing is, this disease is treatable. It is not curable, but it is treatable. A person can come back from addiction. People can beat addiction. Now, it goes into remission like cancer. It does not go away. You are not cured. It can always, rear its ugly head right back if you don't take care of it, if you don't stay with your recovery program, or, if you don't, basically, if you don't handle it like it's cancer, if you don't take care of yourself, if you let yourself go, if you think that, oh, well, I've been in recovery this long, or I haven't used for this long, I can party here and there. No, that's not how it is. It's going to come back probably even 5-10 fold. Once you pick up again, it's off to the races. At least it is with me. That's why they say, like, in AA and NA, one is never enough and 1,000 is too many. And it's true, because realistically, one is never enough. That's always followed by another and another and another. And 1,000, is too many, because at that point, that's your life. I've been 6 feet below rock bottom, walking through the pits of hell, fire and all, and I've come out on the other side of it. I would not, everything I've gone through, everything that, all the traumas, all of the bad decisions, all of the mistakes I've made, they've all been learning lessons in life. They've made me the person I am today. They've made me stronger. They've given me really empowerment. I'm a better person now because of the things that I've been through. And I can help other people get through the things that they go through because of the things that I went through. My story changes lives. I never thought that was possible. I never thought that my story would make a difference, but it does. You know, I had a client last summer that I was pretty much on the phone with him during his entire detox from fentanyl. And he just kept telling himself, if she can get through it, I can get through it. Like, if she can do this, I can do this, you know? And that's just what kept his drive going during his detox. And to this day, he is still in recovery. And, you know, that's a win right there. And I feel so bad for him because the poor guy, after he got into recovery, his wife ended up leaving him because he got pneumonia and was super, super sick. And actually, the infection, so he not only had pneumonia, but he had like tonsillitis. But the infection went from his tonsils to his brain and gave him hallucinations and delusions. And so literally the infection was driving him crazy, making him go into psychosis. And his wife just at that point, after going through his whole detox and getting, being by his side through, his way into recovery, this was her breaking point. And, mind you, she's an ICU nurse. So she's seen the worst of the worst, but she couldn't, stick around for after this with him. And the poor guy was in like psychiatric hospital for, I think like 5 days because of this infection that went to his brain, which, God, that's scary in itself. And it's just like, how do you handle something like that? That's traumatic. That's super traumatic. I mean, I can understand if he was triggered to use after that, because shit, you get sick, and then because you get sick and it's not found right away, you get this infection, it goes to your brain, you become psychotic, end up in the psych unit, and your wife leaves you. Like, that's some shit. That's fucked up. I feel for him. And, I really hope that they can work things out in the future, because, that's really hard, especially with somebody going through, the beginning of recovery. That's something that would definitely risk, falling back into addiction. If you didn't take care of yourself, if you didn't, make sure that, your triggers were being handled properly, you had a good support network, you were working, whatever program you decide to work, or were, kept with therapy, however your pathway to recovery is, which there are multiple pathways to recovery, as long as you stick with it, you'll be all right. But these things are not easy by any means. And that's why relapse is so prevalent, because people end up, becoming triggered and falling back into their, old ways. And I just, for people that are out there struggling with this, you're not by yourself. You're not alone. And anybody that's, ever gotten to the point of recovery and has years of recovery under their belt, you can't tell me that you've never relapsed, because if you do say that, you haven't actually reached recovery, because, relapse is part of recovery. And so, and there's a big difference between like a full-blown relapse and, a lapse. A lapse is where you have like one night where, you've had a long period of recovery, and then, you make a lapse in judgment and decide to use for a night, decide that, 8 hours later, this is not the life you want, and start your journey back into sobriety. And, whereas a relapse is something where you have a period of, long period of recovery, and then, you know, you have your lapse in judgment, but then decide that you're going to continue in using and, continue in the ways of addiction and how it affects you for a period of time that's longer than a day or two. That's a full-blown relapse. It's how you handle it after the use determines whether it's a lapse in judgment or a relapse. But yeah, if you're somebody that can that tells me that you're in recovery and has never relapsed, you're full of shit. There's no way. You're lying to yourself and everybody else. Just saying, because I don't know anybody that's actually, in recovery that has not relapsed at least once. It's not possible. So, like I said, if you say you've never relapsed, you're full of shit. Then you're not in recovery. So, but yeah, I just, really wanted to make a couple points and wanted to talk about, the whole honesty and truth thing and integrity. Somebody that has integrity, they don't have to hide things. They say what they have to say. They're honest. They're to the point. They don't beat around the bush. They spit it out. Like, it's not something that they fear. So when somebody has integrity, it is real freedom, because you don't have shit to hide, and that's something that, I wish my husband would see, because, I don't have shit to hide. I have told him the truth, and unfortunately, he just completely disbelieves me and, feels like I'm making shit up and, I'm bullshitting him all the time for whatever reason. And it's really, really hard. And it gets to the point where, like, it just about, it takes a toll on you, and it gets difficult. And I really, some days are harder than others, and today was just one of those days where I really didn't know how to feel. I was just really, really angry and really, really down. And, tomorrow morning when he calls, it's, we'll see how things go. It's just, at this point, like, I don't know why, the trust is so broken. And, I've done everything I can to prove to him that, I'm telling him the truth, to prove to him that, I'm not lying. And it doesn't matter what I do or say. It just, he just does not believe me. So, and it's hard. It's emotionally draining, mentally draining, and really just makes me really bitter. Like I was with my mom. Makes me really bitter. And I don't like being like that. It's draining. And, I'm not a bitter person. I'm usually pretty relaxed, pretty outgoing. I'm really easy to talk to. I get along with most people. I I can talk to anybody. You know, a lot of people find that I'm somebody they can talk to on the phone for hours and, you know, realize that it's been like 4 or 5 hours and you think it's only been like 20 fucking minutes. It's just, that's just how I am. You know, people find that I'm easy to open up to because I don't pass judgment. I don't look down on people. I am open-minded, and, you know, I look at everybody the same. You know, I don't make people feel comfortable when they talk with me. You know, and that's probably why my clients feel the way that they do when they talk with me, because, you know, they don't feel pressured, they don't feel awkward. They feel like, you know, I'm somebody that listens and I understand, I'm empathetic, I'm compassionate. You know, and most of the time I've been where they've been. You know, I've walked their shoes, you know, and a million times over. You know, whatever they've been through, there's a good chance I've been through it, you know, in one way, shape, form, or another. So you know, that's why, you know, the clients that I do have, you know, they've been with me as long as they have, because even, you know, far into recovery, because they have that person that they can relate to, and that, you know, if they do end up having a bad day, they can call me and, you know, tell me about it, and, you know, we can talk it through and, you know, discuss things and go from there. And it's, you know, it's a comfort for them. So I really just, I don't know. I think this whole trust and honesty thing is really something that is hard for a lot of people. And I wish that, you know, more people understood, you know, what really, like, what it means to be, you know, loyal and you know, somebody that, you know, has integrity. And it's just so emotionally draining when, you know, you do everything you can to, you know, tell the truth and be an honest person. Because let's face it, I mean, there are a lot of people out there that are not honest, that are pathological liars, that do make every fucking thing up, that, you know, and then they believe their lies. So, you know, narcissist is a big part of that. Like, narcissists are energy vampires to people that are empathic, that are, you know, empaths. I'm an empath, and people that are narcissists are, you know, they completely drain people like me of all energy, and to the point to where, like, you just want to go hide and not be around anybody. And it's really hard. It's very, very difficult to deal with, and not something I like to do. And I know a narcissist as soon as I meet one, because it's a really uncomfortable feeling to even be around them. But I'm gonna leave you guys with this quote and end the night. Someone once said, "No matter how good you are, people will judge you according to their own insecurities." So I'm going to close with that, and have a good night, everybody.